A cold wave washed through my body. My chest tightened, breath caught, blood rushed in my ears. Mom's information is outdated. She's getting confused about her own symptoms. The words hung in the hospital corridor as my daughter spoke to my cardiologist around the corner. They thought I was resting. They had no idea I could hear everything. She was a nurse years ago, but medicine has changed. I think her memory of her medical knowledge is unreliable. My hands trembled against the hospital gown. 35 years as an ICU nurse. 35 years of cardiac assessments and life-saving decisions dismissed in a single sentence. My name is Marianne Sullivan. I'm 63 years old, and this is the story of how my daughter tried to convince doctors I was mentally incompetent while I was recovering from a heart attack. What she didn't realize, before I was a mother or a grandmother, I spent 3 decades saving cardiac patients just like myself. If this situation resonates with your soul, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Dr. Harmon's voice dropped. We'll take that into consideration when discussing treatment options. I pressed my palm against my chest, feeling the irregular heartbeat that had brought me here. The same symptoms I'd recognized instantly from years of training. Symptoms I'd calmly explained to EMTs while Rebecca panicked beside me. Providence Memorial had been my workplace for 20 years. I'd walked these corridors during countless night shifts, making life-or-death medication calculations. Now I was the patient, and my own daughter was undermining my credibility. Footsteps approached. I closed my eyes, slowing my breathing as Rebecca and Dr. Harmon entered. Mom. Rebecca's voice was gentle, concerned, entirely different from her dismissive tone moments before. Dr. Harmon wants to discuss your medication. I opened my eyes, noting how she positioned herself between me and the doctor, a power move I'd seen relatives use with patients hundreds of times. Mrs. Sullivan. Dr. Harmon adjusted his tie, a nervous habit before difficult conversations. I'd like to switch your beta blocker. You're showing adverse reactions to the metoprolol. I mentioned that yesterday, I said, voice steady, despite the burn in my chest. I recognized the symptoms from my nursing experience. Excessive fatigue, dizziness beyond normal, cardiac presentation. Rebecca interrupted before Dr. Harmon could respond. Mom, medication has changed so much since you practiced. Those side effects might not even apply anymore. I retired 3 years ago, not 30, I said quietly. The pharmacology of beta blockers hasn't changed that dramatically. Rebecca sighed with exaggerated patience. Mom, please, let Dr. Harmon handle this. A young nurse named Juanita entered with medication, unaware I'd once directed the entire cardiac unit. What's in the mix today? I asked, using my casual tone from pharmaceutical rounds. Rebecca immediately interjected. Just take your medicine, Mom. The doctors know what they're doing. When Rebecca's phone rang and she stepped out to take the call, Juanita's demeanor changed. Were you on staff here? Something about how you asked. Cardiac ICU for 22 years. I smiled slightly. Retired as unit supervisor 3 years ago. Her eyes widened. That's why you sound like one of us when discussing your symptoms. For a moment, I felt seen again. The knowledge I'd spent a lifetime accumulating hadn't evaporated when I retired or when my hair grayed. When Rebecca returned, she noticed the changed atmosphere. Everything okay? As she checked her phone again, the 4th time in 10 minutes, I wondered what decisions might be made about my life. My home, my $87,000 in retirement savings that I'd carefully built through decades of night shifts. The cardiac monitor showed my increased heart rate. I consciously slowed my breathing using techniques I'd taught countless patients. Are you feeling okay? Rebecca asked, noticing the monitor. I'm fine, I said, using my nurse's voice, calm, authoritative, just processing. The truth hovered on my lips. I heard you talking about me like I'm senile. But 3 decades in emergency medicine had taught me to assess before acting. As I drifted into apparent sleep, one thought crystallized. The greatest threat to my independence wasn't my heart condition. It was my own daughter. 2 days later, I was discharged with adjusted medications and strict instructions for follow-up care. Rebecca insisted I stay at her house just until you're steady again, despite my protests. She packed an overnight bag from my home and settled me into her guest room like a child being tucked away. "I've set up your medications in this pill organizer," she explained, showing me a plastic container with labeled compartments. "I'll remind you when to take them." I stared at the childish system. I'd managed medication schedules for entire hospital wings. I'd trained dozens of nurses on proper dispensing protocols. Now my own daughter thought I couldn't manage my own pills. "Rebecca, I don't need—" "Mom, please," she interrupted. "After your confusion at the hospital, we need to be careful." There it was again, confusion. The word she'd used with Dr. Harmon, a word that never appeared in my actual medical records, because no cognitive issues had been diagnosed. "What confusion?" I asked directly. Rebecca fidgeted with the pill organizer, not meeting my eyes. "You know, mixing up your old knowledge with current practices. Dr. Harmon mentioned you seemed disoriented about some of the treatments." A lie. Dr. Harmon had said no such thing in my presence. In fact, he'd adjusted my medications based on the very side effects I'd identified. "I see," I said neutrally, filing away this new piece of information. "I think I'll rest now." "Good idea." Relief flooded her face. "I'll check on you before dinner." The moment she closed the door, I pulled out my phone. 3 decades of nursing had taught me to document everything. Now those habits would serve a different purpose. I made detailed notes, the date, time, and Rebecca's exact words. Then I wrote down everything I could remember from the hospital. The overheard conversation, the dismissive language, the way she positioned herself between me and medical staff. A pattern was emerging, and it sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with my heart condition. After dinner, a bland, salt-free meal. Rebecca insisted was doctor's orders despite no such restriction in my discharge papers. I asked to use her laptop to check my email. "Oh, I can get your email on my phone," she offered quickly. "I'd prefer to see it on a larger screen," I insisted. "These old eyes, you know." I played into the very stereotype she seemed determined to impose on me. Reluctantly, she set her laptop on the dining table. "I'll just clear these dishes while you check it." As soon as she disappeared into the kitchen, I opened the browser history. What I found turned my blood to ice. Memory care facilities near me. How to manage elderly parent finances. Signs of dementia versus normal aging. Power of attorney for cognitively impaired parent. Selling parent's home for care costs. The searches dated back 3 weeks before my cardiac event. A cold clarity washed over me. The kind I'd experienced during hospital codes when emotions needed to be set aside for swift action. The cardiac event hadn't started this. It had merely accelerated plans already in motion. I quickly took photos of the screen with my phone, then cleared the browser history and opened my email as footsteps approached from the kitchen. "Finding everything okay?" Rebecca asked, hovering behind me. "Just fine," I said casually. "Just catching up with Janet." That night, in the guest bedroom, I lay awake, thinking about the life I'd built. My home, purchased 28 years ago when property values were a fraction of today's $412,000 assessment. The retirement savings I'd accumulated through decades of careful budgeting, $287,000 that represented thousands of night shifts, holiday rotations, and overtime hours. Rebecca had been 12 when her father died unexpectedly. I'd worked double shifts for years to provide stability, to fund her education without the burden of student loans, to ensure she had every opportunity. Had those sacrifices somehow bred resentment rather than appreciation? I thought back to the gradual shift in her behavior after my retirement. The increasing frequency of comments like, "Mom, that's not how things work anymore," or "medicine has changed since your day." The subtle repositioning of our relationship from adult to parent-child, with her increasingly in the parental role. The most frightening part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how methodically she'd prepared. The browser history revealed weeks of research, a calculated strategy to take control of my assets, and I might never have discovered it if not for the cardiac event that put me in her home rather than mine. In the darkness, I took stock of my resources. My mind remained sharp. My medical knowledge was still valid. My sister Janet had been my power of attorney since Robert died, a fact Rebecca didn't know. I had allies at the hospital who remembered Nurse Sullivan. Most importantly, I had decades of experience observing family dynamics in healthcare settings. I'd witnessed countless adult children attempt to seize control from aging parents. I documented manipulations, reported concerns, and advocated for patient autonomy. I never imagined I'd need to use those skills to protect myself from my own daughter. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains as my phone vibrated with a text. "Janet, on my way, bringing everything you asked for." I replied simply, "Come alone." Rebecca appeared at the doorway with another pill organizer compartment and a glass of water. "Time for your morning meds, Mom." I accepted them without argument, noting which medications were in the mix. The beta blocker had been adjusted as Dr. Harmon prescribed, but there was something else, a small white pill I didn't recognize. "What's this one?" I asked, holding it up. "Just a mild anti-anxiety medication Dr. Harmon suggested," Rebecca said, "to help with your stress levels." Another lie. There had been no anti-anxiety medication on my discharge papers. "I don't remember him prescribing this," I said, keeping my tone merely curious rather than accusatory. "He called it in yesterday," Rebecca said smoothly. "I forgot to mention it." I palmed the pill while pretending to take it, then excused myself to the bathroom where I flushed it away. When I returned, Rebecca was on her phone, her back to me. "Yes, the confusion seems worse today," she was saying quietly. "I'm documenting everything like you suggested." "Yes, I have the forms. As soon as we get the assessment." I deliberately made a noise with the door. She spun around, ending the call abruptly. "Who was that?" I asked. "Just work," she said too quickly. "How about some breakfast?" The doorbell rang, announcing Janet's arrival. Rebecca seemed surprised when I insisted on seeing my sister alone. "We're just going to catch up," I assured her. "Girl talk." Reluctantly, Rebecca left for the grocery store, but not before saying pointedly, "I'll be back in an hour. Mom needs her rest." The moment the door closed behind her, I turned to Janet, my voice low and urgent. "I need your help. Rebecca is trying to have me declared incompetent." Janet's eyes widened as I showed her the photos of Rebecca's browser history, memory care facilities, power of attorney. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Marianne, this is serious." "There's more," I said, pulling out my phone with documented notes. "She's giving me medication that wasn't prescribed, telling doctors I'm confused when I'm not, limiting my Butler. Classic isolation tactics." My sister's face hardened. She'd been a high school principal for 30 years before retirement. She knew manipulation when she saw it. "Thank God we set up that power of attorney after Robert died," she said. "Rebecca can't override that." "She doesn't know about it," I replied, "and I'd prefer to keep it that way until necessary." Janet nodded, understanding my strategic approach. "What do you need from me?" "First, this." I handed her a sealed envelope. "Put this in your safe at home. It contains a current neuropsychological assessment I had done 3 months ago for my retirement insurance. Perfect cognitive functioning across all domains." "Smart thinking," Janet said. "Second, I need eyes and ears here while I gather more information. Rebecca's planning something for Thursday, some kind of cognitive assessment that Dr. Harmon supposedly ordered." "Which he didn't," Janet stated rather than asked. "Exactly. I suspect she's bringing in someone who'll provide the evaluation she wants, rather than one I need." The front door opened, announcing Rebecca's return sooner than expected. Janet and I quickly shifted to discussing a fictional TV show as footsteps approached. "Aunt Janet, I didn't realize you were still here," Rebecca said, her tone pleasant but eyes sharp. Assessing. "Just catching up with my favorite sister." Janet smiled. I was about to help Marianne back to bed for a rest. I can do that, Rebecca said quickly. Actually, I interjected. Janet brought some things from my house. I asked her to help organize them. Once we were alone in the guest room, Janet pulled several items from her tote bag, including my tablet, which she'd rescued from my house. Rebecca told me your purse was in the front closet, but it wasn't there, she whispered. I found it hidden in her home office. Your tablet was inside. Another violation, another confirmation of my suspicions. There's something else, Janet continued, her voice low. I found financial papers on Rebecca's desk, loan rejection letters, second mortgage application. She's in serious financial trouble, Marianne. The final piece clicked into place. This wasn't just about control. It was about money. My money. My home. How bad? I asked. From what I saw, she's drowning. The second mortgage was denied. Credit cards maxed out. Something about her ex-husband not paying child support for Abby. Abby, my 16-year-old granddaughter, recently accepted to an expensive private university. The pieces aligned with painful clarity. She needs cash, I murmured. And I have it. Liquid assets she can access if she controls my finances. Janet nodded grimly. The house alone would solve her problems if she could sell it. The betrayal cut deeper with this revelation. Not just control for control's sake, but calculated financial exploitation. The memory care facility searches, the invented confusion, the isolation, all leading toward one goal: access to my $207,000 in retirement savings and my mortgage-free home. We need to document everything, I said, nurse mode activating. Build a case systematically. A knock at the door interrupted us. Rebecca peeked in. Everything okay in here? You've been talking a long time. Just catching up, Janet smiled pleasantly. I'm heading out now. That evening, as I prepared for bed, my tablet vibrated with a notification. Janet had set up a secure messaging app for us. The message contained a photo, a legal document on Rebecca's home printer. The heading read, "Petition for Emergency Guardianship." My heart raced. She was moving faster than I'd anticipated. The next morning, I feigned sleep when Rebecca came in with medications. Through barely open eyes, I watched her count my pills, seeming frustrated when the count matched what should be there. She'd expected to miss doses, further evidence of my supposed confusion. I continued my compliant act throughout the day, accepting the medications, palming the unknown pill, eating the bland food, resting when instructed, all while documenting everything on my tablet when alone. Around 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Rebecca hurried to answer it, closing the guest room door behind her. I moved silently to listen. Thank you for coming, Dr. Winters. Rebecca's voice drifted down the hallway. As I explained on the phone, I'm very concerned about my mother's cognitive state since her cardiac event. A man's voice responded, These situations are challenging. I've reviewed the information you sent. If the symptoms are as described, we may indeed need to consider intervention. Information she sent. What information? What symptoms had she invented? My phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Grandma, it's Abby. Mom doesn't know I'm texting. Are you really confused? She's telling everyone you are. My granddaughter had reached out. An unexpected ally. I responded carefully. I'm perfectly fine, sweetheart. Having heart problems, but my mind is clear. Can you talk? Not now. Mom's home. But I heard her on the phone talking about selling your house. She said you can't live alone anymore. My suspicions confirmed from yet another source. Abby, this is important. Do you know if your mom has financial problems? The response came quickly. Huge. She lost her job 3 months ago. Been hiding it. That's why I can't go to Princeton anymore. Unless we figure something out, is what she said. The door to the guest room opened, and Rebecca entered with a man in a tweed jacket. Mom? There's someone I'd like you to meet. This is Dr. Winters. He's a geriatric specialist who works with cardiac patients. I sat up, adopting a slightly confused expression, playing into her narrative temporarily to gather information. "Hello, Mrs. Sullivan," Dr. Winters said kindly. "Your daughter tells me you've been experiencing some difficulties since your hospitalization." What followed was a standard mini mental state examination, a basic cognitive screening tool I'd administered hundreds of times to patients. I performed perfectly on orientation, recall, calculation, and language, much to Rebecca's poorly concealed dismay. "Mrs. Sullivan seems quite sharp," Dr. Winters noted, looking puzzled. Rebecca quickly interjected. "The confusion comes and goes. That's what makes it so concerning." I saw my opening. "Doctor, may I ask your specialty?" "I'm a geriatric psychiatrist," he replied. "And did my cardiologist, Dr. Harmon, refer you?" A slight hesitation. "No, your daughter consulted me directly." "I see," I said. "And are you aware that I was a cardiac ICU nurse for 35 years before retiring? That my concerns about my beta blocker were validated when Dr. Harmon changed my prescription?" Dr. Winters looked surprised, then glanced at Rebecca. "Mom, please," Rebecca interrupted. "You're getting upset." "I don't recall Dr. Harmon ordering a cognitive assessment at all," I replied calmly. The atmosphere shifted. Dr. Winters cleared his throat. "Mrs. Sullivan, based on my initial assessment, you seem perfectly oriented and cognitively intact. I'd like to review your medical records before proceeding further." Rebecca's face flushed. "But the behaviors I described would require more extensive evaluation," he finished diplomatically, "and should be coordinated with her primary cardiac care team." After Dr. Winters left, Rebecca didn't meet my eyes. "You should rest now," she said flatly. "I need to make some calls." I knew what those calls would be. Damage control. A new strategy. That night, I lay awake listening to Rebecca's voice from her bedroom down the hall. The words indistinct, but the tone urgent. She was regrouping, planning her next move. What she didn't realize, so was I. The next morning, Rebecca was uncharacteristically quiet during breakfast. The failed assessment with Dr. Winters had disrupted her timeline, forcing her to regroup. I maintained my compliant facade while watching her every. "Mom, I've been thinking," she finally said, stirring her coffee. "Maybe it's time we discuss your living situation more seriously." "What about it?" I asked mildly. This cardiac event was a warning sign. Living alone in that big house with all those stairs, it's not practical anymore. I took a measured sip of tea. I managed just fine. The master bedroom and laundry are on the main floor. But the maintenance, the yard work, the cleaning, it's too much for someone your age. Someone your age? The dismissive phrase hung between us. "I have a service for the heavy work," I reminded her. "Have for years." Rebecca leaned forward with her reasonable expression. "Mom, I've been researching some wonderful communities. Beautiful apartments, activities, healthcare on site. Sounds expensive," I observed. "Well," she hesitated. "Your house has appreciated considerably. If we sold it, we?" I interrupted gently. "You," she corrected quickly. "If you sold it, you'd have more than enough for these communities, plus a cushion for the future." There it was, the first direct mention of selling my home, presenting it as a decision already in motion. "I'm not ready to leave my home," I said simply. After breakfast, I asked to call my friend Patricia, a fellow retired nurse. Rebecca hesitated, then handed me my phone reluctantly. "I'll be running errands," she said. "Do you need anything while I'm out?" The moment Rebecca's car pulled away, I called not Patricia but Dr. Harmon's office. The receptionist remembered me, not as Rebecca's mother but as Nurse Sullivan, who had worked alongside Dr. Harmon for years. 20 minutes later, my phone rang with Dr. Harmon's direct line. "Marianne," he said, "what's this about misrepresentations?" I took a deep breath. "Has my daughter requested a cognitive assessment for me?" "No," he said, sounding puzzled. "Your cognitive function has shown no concerning signs. Has she suggested I'm confused about my medical history or treatment?" A pause. "She did mention some concerns about your recall of medication schedules. I reassured her it was common for patients to be temporarily disoriented after cardiac events, but I saw no evidence of this in our interactions. And did you prescribe an anti-anxiety medication for me 2 days ago? Absolutely not, he said firmly. Your discharge medications were clearly documented. No anxiolytics were included or subsequently prescribed. Thank you, Peter. One last question. Has Rebecca requested any documentation about my ability to live independently? Another telling pause. She asked for a standard home care assessment, which is routine after cardiac events. I refused her request for a statement about your needing assisted living. There's no medical justification for it. After documenting this conversation, I texted Janet, called Dr. Harmon, confirmed Rebecca lied about medications and assessment. He refused to recommend assisted living. Next, I called Carmen, my former nursing colleague in hospital administration. I need copies of all communication between my daughter and any medical staff regarding my recent cardiac event. That's unusual, Carmen said. Any special requests might alert staff. That's what I'm counting on, I replied. I need a paper trail. While waiting for Rebecca's return, I received another text from Abby. Mom just called Princeton Financial Aid Office from her car, talking about sudden change in family circumstances that might qualify me for aid. Grandmother's house sale mentioned as pending financial resource. My heart sank. Rebecca was already counting my assets as her solution. Did she say when this house sale would happen? I asked. She said within 30 days if all goes according to plan. 30 days. She had a specific timeline, and today was day 5 since my discharge. Rebecca returned from errands with a large bag from the pharmacy. Just restocking your medications, she explained, taking them directly to the kitchen. That afternoon, Janet called with news. I've spoken with Trevor, she said, referring to our attorney. He says we have everything in order legally, but suggests documenting Rebecca's behavior extensively before FIDAFing. He also recommends a full medical assessment by an independent physician, someone with no connection to Rebecca, to establish your competence beyond question. I've scheduled a telehealth appointment with Dr. Lewis tomorrow while Rebecca has her hair appointment, I said. He's known me for 20 years. Perfect. And Carmen will bring those hospital records you requested. She'll stop by tomorrow claiming she's dropping off a care package from your former colleagues. Later that evening, while Rebecca was cooking dinner, her phone rang on the counter. I glimpsed the caller ID. Princeton Financial Aid. She grabbed it quickly and took the call in her bedroom. I used the opportunity to examine the new medications she'd purchased. Among the legitimate prescriptions was an unmarked bottle containing small white pills, identical to the one she'd tried to give me that morning. I irely took one for later identification. During dinner, Rebecca seemed buoyant, almost triumphant. Good news, she announced. I've found a wonderful memory care community just 20 minutes from my house. They actually have an opening next month. Memory care? I kept my voice neutral despite the shock. I don't have memory issues, Rebecca. It's not just for memory problems, she backpedaled smoothly. It's a full continuum of care. You'd start in independent living, but additional services are available as needed. And what would happen to my house in this scenario? I asked casually. Well, obviously you'd need to sell it, she said, as if explaining to a child. Those communities require an upfront payment, plus monthly fees. I see. And my savings? She hesitated fractionally. They'd be managed for your care, of course. By whom? As your daughter. I'd make sure everything was handled properly, she said. That night, I received a text from Carmen. Records request flagged by system. Rebecca made 6 separate inquiries about declaring you incompetent over the past month. Documentation collected. Will bring tomorrow. 6 inquiries before my cardiac event. This wasn't opportunistic. It was premeditated. Early the next morning, Abby sent a photo of Rebecca's calendar showing Robert's Realty, Mom's house evaluation, 2 p.m., scheduled for the following day. Another message followed. Pictures of asset files sent to Aunt Janet as you asked. The pieces were in place. The evidence assembled. my ally's position. Tomorrow, Rebecca would discover that her carefully constructed plan had a fatal flaw. She had drastically underestimated the woman who had raised her, a woman who had managed medical crises, hospital budgets, and life-or-theft decisions for 35 years. She had forgotten that long before I was her mother. I was Nurse Sullivan. "You look nice," I commented as Rebecca applied her lipstick the next morning. "Special occasion?" "Just my hair appointment," she replied, checking her watch. "And a few errands afterward. Will you be okay alone for a few hours?" "Perfectly fine," I assured her. "I might just read and rest." "I've set out your morning medications," she said, pointing to the familiar arrangement of pills. "Don't forget the white one. It's important for your recovery." I nodded agreeably. The moment her car pulled from the driveway, I flushed the mysterious white pill and prepared for my telehealth appointment with Dr. Lewis. The screen flickered to life at exactly 10:00 a.m. "Marianne," he greeted warmly. "Good to see you." Janet mentioned some concerns. For the next hour, Dr. Lewis conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment, more thorough than standard protocols. Memory, executive function, problem solving, judgment, all documented with clinical precision. Based on my evaluation, he concluded, "Your cognitive function is not just normal, but exceptional for any age. I'm documenting this formally in your medical record and sending a signed statement to your email immediately." By 11:30, Janet and Carmen had arrived, followed shortly by Trevor, our attorney. We gathered in Rebecca's living room, reviewing our evidence and strategy. "Everything's in order legally," Trevor confirmed. "The power of attorney you established with Janet in 2009 remains fully valid. Rebecca has no standing to override it without proof of incapacity, which we now have 3 separate medical opinions contradicting." Carmen spread the hospital documentation across the coffee table. 6 separate inquiries from Rebecca about having you declared incompetent, dating back 7 weeks before your cardiac event, plus her false claims about falls and medication non-compliance. Janet added printed copies of Rebecca's browser history and calendar. Memory care facility research going back 3 months. Real estate appointment today. Financial records showing severe personal debt. And Dr. Lewis's fresh assessment confirming perfect cognitive function. I finished, checking my watch. Rebecca should be heading to her real estate appointment soon. The confrontation needs to happen before she meets with them. "Are you sure you don't want to simply leave?" Janet asked gently. "We could have you back in your own home within the hour." I shook my head. "No, this needs resolution, not avoidance. I need to understand why my own daughter would do this, and she needs to face the consequences of her action." At 1:30, we heard Rebecca's key in the lock. She stepped into the living room and froze, eyes darting from face to face before settling on me. "Mom? What's going on? Who are all these people?" I remained seated, maintaining the calm authority I'd developed through decades in emergency medicine. "Rebecca, please sit down. We need to talk." "I'm actually running late for an appointment," she said, edging toward the door. "We can talk when I get back." "Would that appointment be with Roberts Realty?" I asked quietly. "To discuss selling my house?" The color drained from her face. I don't know what you're talking about." "Rebecca," my voice remained steady. "We know everything. The memory care facility research, the false reports to my doctors, the unlabeled anti-anxiety medication you've been trying to give me without prescription, the real estate appointment, the plans for my savings." She stared, mouth opening and closing silently. "Please, sit," I repeated. This time she complied, perching tensely on the edge of the sofa. "Allow me to introduce everyone," I continued. "You know Janet? Of course. This is Carmen Rodriguez, Providence Hospital's records administrator. And this is Trevor Blackburn, my attorney since Rebecca's eyes widened at the word attorney. "We've assembled quite a comprehensive picture over the past few days," I said, gesturing to the documents spread before us. "Would you like me to walk you through it, or would you prefer to explain your actions yourself?" "Mom," she began, voice trembling, "I was just trying to protect you." After your cardiac event. Rebecca, I interrupted gently. The browser history shows you researching memory care facilities 3 months ago. Your inquiries about having me declared incompetent began 7 weeks before my heart problem. This was never about protection. Trevor leaned forward. Mrs. Sullivan, I should inform you that what we've documented here could potentially constitute attempted financial exploitation of an elder, false reporting of medical conditions, and several other serious charges. Rebecca's face crumpled. You don't understand, she whispered. I'm drowning in debt. The divorce, Abby's college. I didn't know what else to do. So you decided to take my home? My savings? My independence? I asked, feeling the pain of betrayal fresh again. It wasn't like that, she protested weakly. Then explain what it was like, I invited, keeping my voice level. The dam broke. Words poured out between sobs. Financial desperation after her ex-husband stopped child support payments, maxed out credit cards, the second mortgage application denial, Abby's Princeton acceptance with insufficient financial aid. I just needed a solution, she finished. The memory care place would have been nice. You would have been taken care of, while you lived in my house and controlled my savings, I stated flatly. She didn't deny it. I took a deep breath. Rebecca, I've spent my entire adult life caring for others, 35 years of nursing, raising you alone after your father died, working night shifts for 6 years to put you through college without debt. For the first time, I allowed my emotions to surface. Do you have any idea how it felt to hear my own daughter tell a doctor I was confused? To discover you were planning to sell my home from under me? To realize you were giving me unprescribed medication to make me appear compromised? She stared at her hands, silent. Look at me, I said firmly. When she raised her eyes, I continued. I want you to understand what happens next. I will be returning to my home today. Janet will accompany me. The power of attorney I established with her in 2009 remains in effect and cannot be challenged without medical evidence of incapacity, which 3 separate doctors have now contradicted. Trevor opened his briefcase. I've prepared some documents. First, a formal cease and desist requiring you to stop all inquiries regarding Mrs. Sullivan's medical condition, financial affairs, or living arrangements. Second, documentation of the evidence assembled, which we are not pursuing legally at this time, but will retain should future issues arise. Rebecca's shoulders slumped in defeat. Why all this? She whispered. Why the attorney? Why the witnesses? You could have just confronted me privately. Because that's exactly what happens to vulnerable older adults every day, I said. They get manipulated in private, with no witnesses, no documentation, no protection. I spent 35 years advocating for patients who couldn't advocate for themselves. I wasn't about to become one of them. Carmen spoke up. As a healthcare administrator, I've documented dozens of cases like this. The difference is that most victims don't have Marianne's medical knowledge or professional network. They don't notice the warning signs until it's too late. Rebecca's phone chimed with a calendar alert, her real estate appointment. What happens now? She asked quietly. That depends partly on you, I replied. I'm going home today. The legal documentation Trevor has prepared will ensure my autonomy is protected going forward. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes directly. As for your financial situation, that requires honest conversation, not manipulation. If you had come to me openly about your struggles, we might have found solutions together. Would you have helped with Abby's tuition? Rebecca asked, a hint of challenge in her tone. I might have, I acknowledged, but now we'll never know, because you chose deception over honesty. Trust is like a mirror, Rebecca. Once broken, you can never look at it the same way again. As Janet began gathering my belongings, Dr. Harmon called my cell phone. Marianne, I've reviewed those medication samples you sent over. The unlabeled white pills are lorazepam, a sedative not prescribed in your treatment plan. Thank you, Peter, I said, looking directly at Rebecca as I spoke. That confirms our concerns. Rebecca paled further. Administering unprescribed medication crossed yet another line. Not just ethical but legal. As we prepared to leave, I paused by Rebecca's chair. Despite everything, this was still my daughter, the child I'd raised alone. Rebecca, I said softly, what you did was wrong on every level, but you're still my daughter, and Abby is still my granddaughter. When you're ready to speak honestly about your situation and rebuild trust, my door will be open. I walked out of Rebecca's house that day with my dignity intact, my autonomy secured, and my future still my own to determine. The betrayal had cut deeply. But the victory wasn't about punishing Rebecca. It was about reclaiming my power and protecting myself. As we drove away, Janet glanced over at me. Are you really going to leave the door open for reconciliation? After what she tried to do? I watched Rebecca's house recede in the side mirror. Someday, perhaps. But trust will need to be rebuilt slowly, with clear boundaries and complete transparency. And Abby's college? I smiled slightly. I've already set up a separate education fund for her. Rebecca doesn't need to know yet. Abby shouldn't suffer for her mother's poor choices. 3 months have passed since that confrontation in Rebecca's living room. Life has settled into new patterns, some unexpected, some healing, all strengthening the foundation of this chapter of my life. My home remains mine, its familiar walls a comfort rather than a burden. The garden blooms with late summer roses, their fragrance drifting through open windows as I work at my desk. It's here, surrounded by memories and independence, that I've found purpose beyond what I ever imagined in retirement. The day after returning home, I called Dr. Harmon with an idea. The situation with Rebecca opened my eyes to something, I explained. If this could happen to me, a retired nurse with medical knowledge and professional connections, what happens to vulnerable seniors without those advantages? 2 weeks later, I launched a volunteer program at Providence Hospital, Advocacy Partners, a network of retired healthcare professionals who assist elderly patients navigating complex medical decisions. We help them understand treatment options, recognize signs of exploitation, and access resources to maintain independence when appropriate. Today, Carmen and I sit with an 84-year-old woman whose son has been pressuring her to sell her home and move to assisted living despite her perfect cognitive function and minimal physical limitations. Mrs. Parker, I say gently, you have the right to make your own decisions as long as you're competent to do so. And based on Dr. Harmon's assessment, you absolutely are. Relief washes over her face. My son keeps telling me I'm being stubborn and selfish, that I'll be a burden if I stay in my home. I recognize the familiar pattern, the same tactics Rebecca had attempted with me. Being older doesn't make you a burden, I tell her. And wanting independence isn't selfish. Let's talk about home support services that could address your son's concerns while respecting your wishes. By the time we finish, Mrs. Parker has a comprehensive plan for maintaining her independence with appropriate supports. Carmen arranges for documentation of her competency to be clearly noted in her medical record, protection against future Haplinwill attempts. Thank you, Mrs. Parker squeezes my hand. I was beginning to believe I was as incapable as my son claimed. That's how it works, I explain. When someone repeats something often enough, even the strongest minds can begin to doubt themselves. On Sundays, Janet and I host what we call wisdom circles, gatherings of women over 60, sharing experiences and strategies for navigating life's later chapters with dignity. What began with 4 Anns has grown to 15 regulars, each bringing unique perspective. Before my cardiac event, I'd fallen into the trap of seeing retirement as an ending. I tell the group today, now I understand it's simply a transition to new purpose. Rebecca and I have spoken 3 times since the confrontation, brief, cautious conversations that neither deny what happened nor fully resolve it. Healing will take time, if it comes at all. The trust shattered that day cannot be instantly repaired, but the door remains cracked open. Abby, however, has become a regular presence in my life. She visits every Saturday, often bringing homework or college application essays for my review. Today, she arrives with exciting news. Grandma, she burst through the door, waving an envelope. Princeton financial aid came through with the scholarship and work study. It's actually happening. I hug her tightly, carefully omitting any mention of the education fund I've quietly established as backup. Some gifts are best revealed when needed rather than announced in advance. I'm so proud of you, I tell her, meaning it completely. As we settle on the porch swing, Abby grows serious. Mom still doesn't know why you're helping me after what she tried to do. Because you're not responsible for your mother's actions, I explain. And because helping you succeed honors the values I've always believed in, even when others didn't honor them toward me. Abby leans against my shoulder. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't figured out what Mom was planning. But I did, I remind her gently. Because of skills I developed over decades of experience. The very experience your mother tried to dismiss as irrelevance. That evening, I receive an unexpected message from Rebecca. I started therapy last month, learning to face my choices honestly. Not asking for forgiveness yet. Just wanted you to know I'm trying. It's the first communication that doesn't attempt to justify her actions or minimize their impact. A small step, perhaps, but one in the right direction. I reply simply, I'm glad you're getting help. Take the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. And that's the truth. I'm not going anywhere. Not to a memory care facility, not to assisted living, not away from the home and life I've built. The cardiac event that Rebecca tried to use as leverage has become instead a catalyst for renewed purpose. Dr. Lewis pronounced me fully recovered at my last checkup, noting that my volunteer work seems to have improved my health markers across the board. Purpose is powerful medicine, he observed. My calendar now fills with meaningful commitments, hospital advocacy sessions, community workshops on elder rights, mentoring young nurses, and occasionally sharing my story with professional groups addressing elder protection. Last week, I spoke to a gathering of medical students about recognizing signs of elder exploitation. Afterward, a young woman approached me. My grandmother is experiencing something similar with my uncle, she admitted. I didn't know how to help until I heard your story. Thank you for your courage in sharing it. This is the unexpected gift that emerged from Rebecca's betrayal. The opportunity to transform personal pain into public purpose, to use my experience as a bridge for others facing similar struggles. Tonight, preparing for bed in my own home on my own terms, I catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror. At 63, my face shows the expected signs of timelines around my eyes, silver threading through my hair, the subtle softening of once sharper contours. But what strikes me most is the transformation not visible on the surface. The woman looking back at me stands straighter, speaks more directly, and advocates more fearlessly than the person I was before Rebecca's manipulation attempt. It's not that I needed the betrayal to find my strength. The strength was always there, built through decades of professional challenges and personal resilience. What I needed was the reminder that this strength doesn't diminish with age or retirement. If anything, it deepened. My phone chimes with a final message for the day. From Carmen. 10 new referrals this week. Your story continues to create change. Sleep well, Nurse Sullivan. I smile in the darkness. The title still fits, though its application has evolved. Once, I advocated for patients as a clinical nurse. Now, I advocate for myself and others as a woman who refuses to let age define her worth or limit her autonomy. Age may change your body, but it doesn't erase your mind or your dignity. No one has the right to take either from you. That truth, hard-won through betrayal and reclamation, has become both my shield and my offering to others walking similar paths.